Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's see if you can hear us. Could you write in the chat to confirm? Yes, we got thumbs up. Anton, can you say good morning as well?
I've already done that in the chat.
Okay, and you can hear Anton as well?
Can you hear me?
Yes, okay, great. Welcome everybody to this webinar. I'm Johan Strand, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our first webinar, where we will be talking about BigQuery, SQL, how to get started, and how to get started working with GA4 data as well. So the first question, just to check the audience, is have you worked with, let's see, have you worked with BigQuery and or SQL before? So we have a mixed audience, around 70% say that they have worked with BigQuery and or SQL before. So around half now. That's great because I brought in an expert to talk about this today. Anton Gezelius, take it away.
Okay, so I'm already introduced. Anton Gezelius is my name. I'm co-founder and team lead at Control Digital. I've been working with digital marketing and digital analytics for soon 15 years with a heavy focus on technical implementation, such as the Google Suite, Google Analytics, GTM server-side, GCP, etc. So, Control Digital, who are we? We are a digital analytics and measurement consultancy. We are based in Sweden. We have 3 offices in Stockholm, Gothenburg, Malmo. And our service offering is around digital analytics and measurement, but to be more detailed, it's tracking, warehousing, analytics and ML, privacy, strategy, and training. So this is our service offering. So we don't do performance marketing or anything other than digital analytics and measurement. That's our core focus. So the agenda for today is to first take a look back. What was digital analytics back in 2015, and some shifting trends that we have seen since then. We will look into the evolving digital landscape and how that affects us, and which technologies we have to learn and master as digital analysts. And after that, we will jump into how to get started with GA4 and BigQuery. So this is tailored to beginners that haven't really started yet working with SQL and BigQuery, and might find it difficult to understand how to get started, because GA4 BigQuery dataset it's a quite complicated dataset to get started with. And after that, we will have a live demo where we will jump into BigQuery and try out some SQL concepts, but also look at the interface. And at the end, we will have some time for questions. Okay. So the digital analyst back in 2015, I'm not sure if everyone agrees with this. There are so many different experiences from this time, but back then, at least in my experience, is that you were a rock star basically if you knew how to get around in Google Analytics. If you could configure goals in GA, it was Universal Analytics back then, or you could configure tracking tags in GTM just to measure clicks and explain about UTM tags to stakeholders in companies. That was like a superpower back then, because no one really knew about this back then. Or I wouldn't say no one, but it wasn't as widely spread as it is today. But there has been a shifting trend also since 2015. Back then, many of the projects that I was involved in included importing data to Google Analytics. So you had your data in Google Analytics. It was clickstream data, behavioral data, and you wanted to enrich that data with data from other data sources. So many of the challenges included cost uploads or importing, doing dimension widening to enrich like session dimensions or user scope dimensions with data from other sources. The problem is that all type of data doesn't really fit in a system like Google Analytics. Google Analytics is a very niche tool. It's a clickstream tool, and all kind of data shouldn't live within Google Analytics. And that's something that we saw many times. We saw our own projects fail, basically. So I would say that there has been a shifting trend where 10 years back, we were still focusing a lot on getting data into Google Analytics because we wanted to do the analysis there. While nowadays, the data warehouse and the GA4 logo in this slide has switched places. GA4 is just one data source, or the clickstream tool. It can be other tools. It doesn't have to be GA4, but that's one data source. It's a data collection platform, and we want to export that data somewhere else, most often to a data warehouse where we have other data sources. So if this was a digital analyst in 2015, if you don't get your way around with managing data in other systems than Google Analytics, you might feel a bit limited nowadays. So many companies nowadays are also very self-sufficient when it comes to basic challenges. So 10 years back, when you were working with clients, just presenting conversion rates, just presenting different dimensions, what the conversion rate split per mobile device, etc., could actually be something that enlightened that customer, because it was new information to them. They didn't have the capacity to make such an analysis by themselves. But nowadays, many of the people that works on the client side, they already have worked on agencies or have experiences from this tool. So as a digital analyst, if you want to be relevant on the marketplace, you really need to maintain and develop new skills that aren't that basic. And the reason for why we are here today is basically that many of these challenges can be addressed with the help of SQL, because you're getting the data out of Google Analytics. Also, I just want to point out that Google BigQuery, I often hear the term Google BigQuery interchangeably with the word SQL, and it's two different things. Google BigQuery, and I will get back to this later on, is a data warehousing solution. It's in GCP, Google Cloud Platform, and it integrates very well with marketing and analytics products, where SQL, on the other hand, that's a programming language or a querying language that we can use in multiple environments, not just BigQuery. And I talked about these complex user journeys, and I just want to present an example of this. So if you go back maybe 10 years, we had often the challenges were around a single website. It was one Unity, maybe one domain, and the conversion could have been a lead form or a purchase. Where since then we have seen many more the digital applications and the customer journeys being much more complicated, because they can live over different digital devices. So you can start on the web, and then it might involve sign up, and then you download an app. It can get even more complicated if you have like scanners and terminals, etc. And that wasn't as common if you go back 10, 15 years. And this is just an example of that. So imagine maybe a SaaS product, maybe a streaming service, and on day one, we have a user clicking an ad and initiates a session and starts a free trial. So it creates an account and starts a free trial. So maybe if it's a streaming service, they start watching the latest episodes of whatever. So these are web events. We can track these interactions with the help of clickstream tools, and we also have the ad click from the ad platform. This is fairly simple to measure, and it has been for a long time. And we use Google Analytics often for this kind of measurement. But after this, it can be that the user is maybe inactive, because the free trial let's say it goes on for 7 days, and after day 7, there will be a subscription fee. So your credit card will, there will be a purchase basically, but that doesn't happen at the click of the user. It's not that the user is on the website coming to a receipt page, and we can measure that with a data layer push and with the classic on-site measurement. It's something that happens in the backend, in a backend system. So this could potentially happen when the user is out fishing, doesn't even have the phone with him or her. So there we need to get this information in another way from the backend system. And one way of doing that is to import data from Google Analytics and import data from the backend system to some other system, a data warehouse, where we can actually join this information and make the analysis. We can, of course, use measurement protocol and all of that, but that's just one way of getting the data into Google Analytics. It's suitable sometimes, but many times it's a better way to get the data from its sources. And from here, we can start working with reporting. We can start working with analysis, and maybe even doing uploads through maybe Data Manager to Google Ads for offline conversion measurement. What I want to demonstrate here is that this isn't super trivial. We need to involve more tools than just Google Analytics, and it's in order to get around these tools, it's a great skill to have SQL in your toolbox. And also, I want to point out that this subscription start, I only mentioned it, but I want to emphasize it. It's not a web event. It's something that happens offline. So that's just one example of when SQL becomes important to master. But there are also other use cases. It can be any kind of customization of your data. It can be data modeling, attribution. Some of you, I'm sure, have been disappointed of how attribution works in GA4. You might want to apply your own models and your own logic to it. Great knowing SQL in that case. And some custom reporting where you get data from other data sources, not only Google Analytics, and you can do your own modeling and cleaning of the data. Also combining data sources, calculating customer lifetime value, deduplicate conversions, or adjusting conversion value. Just because one user bought something at one point doesn't mean that the real value coming from that interaction is correct. The first data point that we get from our tracking system. Media mix modeling, data activation, applying ML to cluster audience segments, preparing data for upload, but also one of my primary use cases when I use SQL is debugging. I prefer using SQL to actually zoom into different to sessions and interactions within that session to understand how the measurement is working. Just a few examples. So maybe time to learn SQL. I think it's time to learn SQL if you're a digital analyst that also are interested in these like data wrangling parts. Of course, it's not necessary for everyone, but I think it's a very important skill to have if you're an aspiring digital analyst nowadays. But what I've noted, and I also experienced it from in my own journey, is it was quite difficult to start learning SQL. And for that reason, we at Control we've written a blog post, and we call it the guide on how to get up and running with working with SQL and GA4 data and BigQuery. So that's what I'm gonna present now before I go into the live demo. So back to this question, Google BigQuery, what is it? Like I already mentioned, BigQuery is not the same as SQL. So I just repeat this, Google BigQuery, it's a cloud-based data warehouse platform in GCP. You can think of it as a giant spreadsheet, so capable of containing multiple data sets and tables. A spreadsheet is not suited for storing like tons of data, but Google BigQuery is created for that purpose. And SQL is, like I said, a structured query language, a language to interact with databases. So BigQuery it's just one data warehousing solution. We have others, of course, in Azure and Amazon. So it's a great skill to have, regardless if you're working in a Google environment or any other environment. As a data analyst, it's kind of the mother tongue language for the data analyst. So instead of starting with how to learn SQL and how to get started with BigQuery, I will start by saying what not to do when you start when you're getting started with SQL and BigQuery, and that is to the first thing you do when you try to learn SQL is to start off with the GA4 BigQuery export, because the BigQuery export from GA4 is actually has a very complicated schema, so it's not very suited for a beginner. And for that reason, I want to propose that you get started with a public data set. So we have this blog post. We will send you the links later. But basically, the content of it is to start off by creating a GCP account, because you need to get started there, and then access BigQuery public data sets if you haven't already. And then when you have that access, start learning the basics of SQL. I will send links and will also present it here, some basic concepts that you can get started with, and apply that newly acquired knowledge on the BigQuery public datasets, because it's so much easier to start working with that dataset. And then when you have the basics, then you can go to explore the Google Analytics for BigQuery datasets. And also I will have a short slide on how you can actually benefit from using ChatGPT or any similar tool to be your co-partner or co-coder when you work with SQL. So BigQuery public datasets, what is it? So Google and Google Cloud Platform, they offer free datasets for you to practice on, or just explore and test out your code. And they have hundreds of datasets, and it's almost for free, because you in GCP you still pay for the amount of data that you query, but that's almost impossible to get over the free tier of 1 terabyte per month. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but if you work and you're conscious about what you're doing in GCP, then it's really hard to get over that limit. And after that, it's about $6 per terabyte, so it's not that expensive when you work with small data sets. And examples of the data sets that you can explore is Austin crime. So it's crime statistics in Austin. So this is real statistics. It's not like dummy data. It's real world data. There are statistics for around COVID, sports statistics if you're interested in that. So maybe that's a good way to get started. And Google Trend data. They also have that in the public data sets. And the reason for why I recommend starting here is because a majority of these tables are flat tables. And what I mean by that is that it's the way we are used to seeing data in a table. So if you work with spreadsheets, you are accustomed to seeing like columns and rows. So it's two-dimensional. And this is an example of this. We have the first name, last name, office, and we have the rows containing the values. And that's not the case with the GA4 BigQuery export, which contains nested data. So I recommend starting off with the BigQuery public data sets because it's simpler, and learn the SQL basics. You can pick any online resource. There are tons of free resources. I like we3schools.com, where they have like interactive online courses. It's good documentation, but it's also a good way to try out the code that you're working with. So start by elaborating there and apply that knowledge to the BigQuery dataset that you started working with. And some of the basic concepts that you should start with is the most basic select, where, order by, conditions, and aggregate functions, and group by, etc. I will show you this in a minute. But also in the blog post that we've written and that we will link you to, we from that blog post, we also have resources that we link to where they explain this further. For instance, this resource, We3 Schools. So practice all these concepts as soon as you know your way around it, or you want to try it out. I recommend creating challenges for yourself. So try and figure out, I want to do an analysis here. I'm trying to figure out the most the clearance rate, for instance, in a typical district, in a district in Austin, for instance. Then you can start asking those questions with SQL. And we have an example for this where look at the clearance rate in different districts for the primary type, which is the crime type, theft, in 2015. You can also present to ChatGPT the data set that you are working with and ask ChatGPT to give you challenges, and you can ask them to ask it to help out, or give you even harder challenges, or maybe new challenges, or even more basic challenges if it's too hard. Then when you have that foundation and you are comfortable in the basics in SQL, then I recommend that you explore the Google Analytics for BigQuery datasets. And one of the most important parts here is that you need to understand nested tables, because every row in GA4 BigQuery export represents an event. And if you ever worked with a measurement plan in GA4 or implementing event, you know that we often have the structure of an event name and then key value pairs. It can be event parameters, so metadata about that single event. It can be event parameters, but also user properties. So it's not this two-dimensional flat table anymore. It contains this nested field. So it's basically a table that lives within a cell in the table, which makes it a bit more complicated and harder to grasp. But as soon as if you have the basics in SQL, then it will be a lot more easier to get started with it and understand it. So this is an example of how a row in the GA4 BigQuery dataset looks like. We have an event name, and then we have the event params associated with it. So this is one row, but as you can see, we have multiple rows within that row, and that's the nested table. And I will get back to that later in the live demo. I also want to just point out that there are hundreds or maybe thousands of online resources on this topic. So sometimes it's paid resources like Simmer, but you also have free high quality content on YouTube on how to work with the GA4 BigQuery dataset and other blogs, etc. So I just recommend you to look up a good alternative. And in the blog post, I also send with you a few links that you can look into. And then again, it's ChatGPT. I just want to show this. So in this, on the left side here, we have a prompt. So this is a real world example of how this dialogue went with ChatGPT. So I'm just taking a snapshot of the schema in BigQuery. So this is basically all the columns in the Austin dataset that I'm working with, and I'm telling ChatGPT that I'm working with this dataset, and can you give me a question or a SQL challenge so that I can start practice my SQL skills? And then the answer is actually very good. It gives me a challenge. It's quite basic, but it also gives me a few hints. So if I'm entirely new to SQL, it's good to have those hints. And you can start being interactive with ChatGPT and ask questions. Why isn't my code working? What am I doing wrong here? So before we jump into the live demo, I just want to summarize here from this presentation. We have seen a shift in trends from importing data into Google Analytics to exporting data, and for this reason, we also need to master SQL. And the digital applications, they evolve in complexity. They can contain more touch points and applications within the same user journey. So as that becomes more complex, so do measurement and analytics. And this has led to a higher demand for SQL skills. And my recommendation is to start your journey by learning SQL basics before jumping into the GA4 BigQuery dataset. And I recommend utilizing online resources and ChatGPT. Great. Live demo. Johan, any questions so far in the chat?
Yes, we have had some questions coming in. I don't know if you're going to touch upon it, but if I have a GA4 property, how do I get the data into BigQuery?
Great question. So you need to have access to, you have to first have created a GCP account, and you need to have access to both, preferably admin access, highest access to both of them. And then you can go into GA4, and if you log into the same Google account and you go into GA4 and click your way to product links and into BigQuery, then if you have access to a GCP project, then you can choose that GCP project and link. And from there on and forward, you will get the data exported on a daily basis. You don't get the historical data, so you won't be able to backfill the data in this export, unfortunately. But yesterday, anyone that have noted that there was a new update, so there is a data transfer making it possible for you to export data from GA4 to BigQuery with a backfill. But that, unfortunately, that's a different data set with different columns and with a different schema, basically.
And another question before we get started. Will you only work with the GA4 data in the demo, or will there be other data sources?
I will start off by showing the public dataset part and some basic SQL concepts like select, where, from, group by, and then I will end up showing the GA4 BigQuery dataset and the most basic parts around it so that you can get started with it.
Okay, please take it away.
Great. Okay, where am I? I'm in Google BigQuery, in Google Cloud. So this is an organization, a project, controlled digital demo account. So if you work in GCP, you first need to start a project. And here I have data sets in Google BigQuery. And this is projects, and here we have data sets. So now I'm in showing you some data sets from the public data, from the public data sets. And as you can see, there are tons of different data sets that you can start practicing with. And let us start with Austin crime. Okay, so this is a data set that I'm showing you now. You can think of that as a folder, and a data set can contain multiple tables. So maybe you can think of it as a sheet with different tabs. So the Austin crime would be the sheet, and crime would be different tabs in that sheet. So Austin crime can contain multiple tables. In this case, it only contains one table. So if I click into the table, the first thing we will see is the schema. It contains all the columns in the table, and we will see, the data type of each field. Sometimes you will see descriptions if they did a good job in documenting what is in that table. So here, for instance, we see some partial documentation. Okay, so how does this data look like? I normally start by looking at the schema, but I often want to get a feel of how the data looks like. So I'll go into preview just to see, okay, what am I working with here? So this is the table, Austin crime. And from here we can start working with this data. So one way to start working with it is to just click here, query, and it will open up this code editor for you. And it will pre-write the select from and the table name in BigQuery so that you don't have to do that manually, which is very comfortable. Okay, so now we're actually writing SQL. So if you haven't seen SQL before, this is SQL. So, and there we have it. So this would be the most basic SQL code, basically. So what we want to do when we write SQL is that we work with a table, and the table has columns and rows, and we want to produce a new table in the response. So if I run this query, it will basically just give me all the data that is in the table, and so that will be identical. So as the base table, the crime table, it will give me all columns and all rows. So this star here basically means give me everything, give me all columns. But if I want to just select a few columns, because what we do in the select statement is that we produce columns that we want produced. We can look at some of these tables. Maybe we'll take clearance date. We can take primary type. Clearance status maybe. And if we run this query, we will have 3 columns returned to us. So now we actually get a new table back. It's not identical to the one that we're working with, but we haven't done much to it yet. So let's do something new to this. We might say that we want only the clearance date from murders. It goes dark. So we need to apply a filter. We do that by using the where clause. So this is where we set the condition. We only want to get rows where primary type equals murder. Okay, so now we don't have an identical table anymore. It gives us only the murder, and we only have the clearance date, primary type, and clearance status. This doesn't give us that much right now. So in SQL, the most basic commands that you can start working with, or the most basic concepts, would be select, from, where, group by, and order by. So it basically means, okay, what columns do I want, or what values do I want to produce, or what fields do I want to produce? From what data source am I querying this from? What conditions do we set? Do we want to filter this data before we return the response? And do we want to do some calculations or aggregations? So let's do an aggregation and use an aggregate function. So this is a function in BigQuery. This basically means count all the rows. And we can use an alias to name this column. And here we get an error. What I want to do here is that I want to, for each primary type, which is the crime type, for each primary type, I want to see the number of cases filed or reported. And this doesn't work as it is right now, because we need to explain to BigQuery, or with the SQL code, what field do we want to aggregate this for. So we need to use a group by. we want to group this primary type. So here we go. Here we have 18 rows because we have 18 different primary types. Now we're making a group by. Think of it as if you would choose the device category in GA4, and then you want to count all the sessions for each device category. It would return 3 rows. And in this case, we have 18 different values for different crime types. And then we can order by records, descending. So I want the highest number first. So now we're actually answering questions here. We have each crime type, and we see the amount of reports for each crime type in Austrian. Maybe we want to do this for only a specific district. So let's look into the district field. So we had, I think, one called district. Here we have it. Maybe we can have a preview and see the district. UK, that's a district named UK. Where district equals UK. So now I'm applying a filter here. So before it starts counting and aggregating, it makes sure that we're only looking at the district UK. Here we go. So we get the same numbers now for UK, the district UK. So I would say start, this is where you should start if you have no experience in SQL at all. Learn this structure, select from, where, group by, order by, those 5 concepts. And start practicing, start elaborating with the filters, and start exploring in different ways how it affects your data. You can also extract and change the values of the data you're working with. So take, for instance, this example. We have the timestamp. That was a column. So let's still be here in district UK. So let's take a look at timestamp. It looks like this. So what if I only want the date, not the entire timestamp? I only want the date. Then I need to do something with this column because we don't have the date already configured in the table. Then we can use a function called extract date from timestamp as date. When I use as date, it means that I name the column in my response, in the response. Okay, so this would produce only the dates. We will still have a row for every record here. But if we would want to group, for instance, the amount of records, how many reports were there as reported crimes, and we need to group by date, order by date. Here we go. So in the district UK, we will have the date, and we will have 1 row per date because we group by date, and we will have the amount of reported crimes. And this is a neat feature in BigQuery where we can look into how this looks. If you look at the data, it wasn't that much reports in the district UK. Let's remove that filter and see if the chart is a bit nicer. Yeah, here we go. So that's a way to extract and create new values that aren't parts of the initial table. Extract date from timestamp. We can also apply calculations that is quite difficult to do just by looking at the table or getting an understanding of that. We could, for instance, take this query here. We have a timestamp, we have clearance date, which It's named clearance date, but it's a timestamp in this table. And then we take the date, just like I did in the previous example. And then we use a function called timestamp diff, where we want to see, okay, how between the timestamp and the clearance date, how many days were there? So the clearance time in days. How many days did it take to clear this reported crime? And just to see if we order that by clearance time in days, in descending, we will get the crime that took the longest time to clear. That would be a burglary or a breaking and entering in, and it took them 499 days to clear, to solve. And I fully understand if this goes very. We go over this very briefly, and I understand that you don't need to take notes on each and everything. We have this recorded, by the way, and you can get a link after the webinar. But what I want to demonstrate here is that there are ways to aggregate the data, there are ways to filter the data, and there's also ways to manipulate the data. So get started working with public data sets and try to master these concepts before you jump into the GA4 BigQuery data sets. And on that topic, the BigQuery data set, let's go into that. Okay, so that was the public data set. Of course, you don't have to work with the Austin crime. If you're interested in sport, go search for something with sports. Anything that you think is funny to work with. Here we have down here the export from Control Digital's GA4. So this is the data set, and these are the tables that these two. Don't look at this one. So we have events and events intraday. These are the two. I'm not going to say tables, but I will get back to that. It's sharded tables. Just give me a moment and I will explain that. So, but think of this as a table. So these are the tables that we get from the BigQuery export. And as you can see, the schema is we have a lot of columns, because it's not only these columns, we also have these nested fields. We have repeated fields, we have records, etc. User properties and device information, etc. So we have a bunch of columns here. If we look at this data, you will see that it doesn't look like a two-dimensional flat table because this is one row. Everything here belongs to the same row. And we have event name, event timestamp, and all these columns here, and it goes on and goes on. So you really need to understand what these columns are containing and how they are working. So just to make it a bit easier to get started, I want to just show you a few columns that I always use when I work with GA4 data. So it's event timestamp, user saved ID, event name, and event params. Of course, I use more columns than that, but in almost all queries that I work with in GA4, I work with these columns, with these fields. So if I'm querying this data right now, I'm gonna get the event timestamp, which is the timestamp of when the event occurred. User saved ID. What is that? That's the client ID. So the Google Analytics cookie, the GA cookie, produces a unique value for the browser. And that is the value that we get in user saved ID in most cases. It can be different if we are using GTM server side, etc. And it can be manipulated. But think of it as the client ID. You can even name it the client ID. And the event name and the event params. I'm going to comment out this event params. I'm not going to take this for now. Oh, the M on my keyboard isn't working very well. Okay. So here we go. We have the client ID, not on all rows. We can actually filter out so that we only have rows where the client ID is set. Client ID or user saved ID is not null. So I only want to see rows where the client ID is set. Here we go. So this might be familiar to you. You have event names and think of every event as a row here. But what if I introduce the event params field here? This is where things starts to get complicated because this is a nested field. So it contains the key of the event parameter and also the value. And then we have it in different fields here. We have string value, int value, float value, double value. Most of the times, you will find the value of the event parameter in the string value or in the int value. But it depends on your implementation, of course. But I'm just going to show you a neat way to extract if you're interested in maintaining just one event parameter from in a query. And that's by using a subquery. So if I want to get page location here, for instance, the page URL of the page, I just want that in a field. I can use a so-called subquery where I select the string value from a nest event params. This syntax here, first time I used that, I did not even really understand how it was doing the things it was doing. I just copy-pasted it and remembered it. And I wrote it down just so that I could reuse it. Here we go. Now, finally, we have a flat table. Because many times you want your query to produce a flat table. You want to unnest things and get rid of that nested data structure before you schedule it into a Looker Studio report or something like that. So here we go. Now we have the event timestamp, client ID, event name, and the page URL. And the event timestamp is in GA4 is always presented as an integer. And with that, we could use a function called timestamp micros to convert that to an actual timestamp as timestamp. Now the data is more readable. We have a timestamp that is readable. We have the client ID, the event name, and the page location. So I just wanted to showcase with J4 BigQuery dataset how it works with nested fields and why it's not a good starting point when you learn SQL. As you can see, it gets a bit more complicated. But don't get afraid when you see this because it looks complicated. But as soon as you get hold of the SQL basics, you will find this a lot more easier to work with as long as you just learn these basic subselects and methods that I use here. Also, last thing, I know we are running out of time. I'm not sure why I can't see it here. Up here, why can't I see that? Johan, do you have any clue? Why can't I see the...
No, that's strange.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. What I wanted to tell you is that up here, if you hold the pointer here, you will see an estimate on how much this query will cost you, basically. It doesn't say communicating in crowns, but as you pay for the amount of data that you query, this shows you the amount of data that we are querying. And right now we're working with kilobytes, so it's basically free. It is free. It's that cheap. But if you start working with hundreds of gigabytes, then it will start incurring costs. So I also recommend that you always keep an eye. Normally you see it here without, now I have this bar destroying everything for me in the demo, but it will always show you, okay, if you press enter and you run this query, this will query and process this much data.
You zoom out a bit because I think it's because you're zoomed in.
Nope. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Yes. So this query will process 176 kilobytes. It's nothing. Yes. Okay. So on that topic, I also want to just mention sharded tables. So think of the the table here. Think of it as one table, but technically it's sharded tables, and there are a bunch of tables on top of each other, you could say. So you will always have one table for one date, so because the GA4 always exports yesterday's data to Google BigQuery. So how do we work with that? Because this contains only data for yesterday, or 2 days ago actually, so the 25th of March. So if I want to query multiple dates, you can query more tables basically. So you can remove this date string here and replace it with an asterisk. This means that we will query all dates. So how do you create the condition that you only want data between 2 different dates? You use that in the where clause. And this asterisk here, you can reference that by using something called table suffix. So this is a reference to that table suffix, and you can set a condition. I want the table suffix to be between 2 dates. I want it to be between 2025, the 1st of January, 2025, and 2 days ago. So now we have 2 conditions. We only query data from the table names that have dates in this date range, and we make sure that user saved ID is not null. So this will cost us, or we will query 8 megabytes of data, still nothing. And here we go. Great. Yes, let's stop there. Questions?
Yes, we have one question from the chat. Gemini AI in BigQuery. Have you tried that, and how is that to work with?
I have tried it, and I wasn't very impressed by it. First, it didn't have a very good understanding of the data that I was working with. So at that point, I must admit, was a few months ago. It might have improved since then. I suppose it have, but ChatGPT, at least, I and also other LLM services are better at understanding code and communicating code in dialogue with me. And I also heard questions. I'm not sure if this is the same kind of question. That is it an alternative to learning SQL? I would say no, because if you want to communicate with an AI around code, you must be able to understand what code you are requiring or asking for. So it will really help you, but don't forget to learn the basics before you start working with Gemini, because it will produce lots of errors and give you false results.
Great. And then I have answered some of the questions in the chat, so I think you'll find the answer there. Should we skip to the last slide? Because we have other things coming up. We will host an intro course into GA4, April the 3rd, and Anton will do a more in-depth BigQuery course on April 24th. And then I will follow up with a slightly more advanced BigQuery course around data form on May 15. And then we also have, if you are in the south of Sweden, a meetup coming up in Malmö on April the 8th, where you will speak, I think, Anton, about BigQuery as well. And then I will host a webinar that will also touch upon BigQuery and working with data, but with data form on April 29. And if you sign up for our newsletter, I will give you the link in 2 seconds. There you will get all these dates and all the information. And also, if you have questions coming up during the day, you can follow both me and Anton on LinkedIn and send us any questions you have there in a DM, and we will try to answer them as good as we can. And let's see, no other questions. We got a question, will you be in Gothenburg soon? Yes, I think we are planning some events in Gothenburg soon. So make sure to follow our newsletter and you will get info and dates about that. And with that, I say we are right on time. Thank you for today, Anton. And thank you for the audience. You will get the recording afterwards as well. See you next time.
Bye-bye.